Hey, this is Derek Murphy. I'm standing outside the chateau we rented for a writing retreat in southern France. Off in the distance, there's some people shooting clay pigeons, so that's that loud sound you hear over there, the shotguns going off. I want to talk a little bit about my book, Guerrilla Publishing, and the 4 things you need to do to publish and market a book successfully. In my group, which I made for the book, which is a community of about 10,000, I think, writers always struggle with very basic things when they start off publishing a book for the first time. And that's why I really have focused on not the marketing, but the publishing part, which is why it's guerrilla publishing. There are things that come before the marketing, which are actually more important than the marketing itself. And there are 4 main things that you have to get right. Some people have commented that, they don't have time to watch my YouTube videos, they don't have time to read a book. They just want quick solutions, and that's not always possible. The authors who succeed are the ones who learn how to do things themselves, and it takes some time and practice, and you're probably going to screw things up the first time, which can be depressing. So a lot of authors publish a book, it's not selling, and they give up, and they never really figure out, they don't have any reviews, they don't have any readers, they don't have an audience, it doesn't seem fair. How do they get their book to sell? So I'm going to talk through the 4 basic things that I think you need. And the first one's really controversial, but the first one is you have to write a book that people want to read. And the ideology of creative production says something like you should write from your passion, your soul. The more enjoyment that you put into your work, the more readers will enjoy it as well. That's not actually true. And the problem is that the majority of writers are trying to focus on writing some kind of a literary fiction or nonfiction book. They focus on the quality of the writing, and they don't know their audience. They don't know who they're writing for, or who's going to enjoy it, or why they would enjoy it. So they end up with a book that people don't actually want, or they don't know how to communicate the benefits of the book that they've written so that it resonates with the audience who would actually enjoy it. And that's why it can be so productive and valuable to think about your audience on purpose before you write the book or while you're planning the book, because you can do things. If you know what that audience responds to, you can write a book on purpose that satisfies them, which you can do with keyword research. So I use a KDP Rocket by Kindlepreneur, David Chesson. That's a valuable tool you can use to research keywords, but you can also just go on Amazon and look through the keywords and categories. Read all the reviews. Read the reviews of all the books in your category to see what readers like and dislike about those books so that you know how to satisfy those readers. That's the kind of research. Some authors will say, I don't care about the marketing or the audience. I don't care if anybody likes it. I just want to write the book that I like. I want to be proud of my book. But the thing is, there's kind of this prejudice against the writers who are successfully self-publishing because we are writing good books that readers like, and the people who consider themselves as the real writers who you've spent 10 years slaving over their novel and they think it's brilliant, those are the ones who struggle to find an audience because they're writing for a very small minority. They're hoping that their book is better quality and therefore it won't satisfy the vast hordes of popular readers, but hopefully somehow it'll last through the sands of time because the quality stands out or whatever. That's not true. It doesn't actually happen very often. It might have used to be true, like the whole, in the Romantic period in the 19th century, a lot of writers had shifted away from craft and focused more on, as Wordsworth says, something like the spontaneous overflow of emotion, of powerful emotion. And a lot of writers still feel it's more satisfying to write a book that way. It's more satisfying to go through a process of discovery where you don't really know what's going to happen and your mind fills in those blanks, and it's really exciting. So you instinctively feel like your book must be good, and then when you put it out in the world and nobody likes it or buys it, or you can't get anybody to even look at it, it can be really stressful and frustrating. And I don't want writers to give up, but you have to understand that when you write for the market, when you try to make your readers happy on purpose, it's not a matter of selling out or stepping down or giving up your dreams of being a creative genius. It's the way to write better quality books. You can write better books, and by good or by quality, I define it as books that readers enjoy. And that's step 2, which is books readers enjoy. So the first one is books that people actually want. You have to do research so you know what your readers are looking for, what keyword searches they're looking for, what's popular at the moment. Doesn't mean you necessarily have to write to the trends or the popular stuff, although you can, because trends change to last a few years. With self-publishing, it's actually pretty easy to hit trends if you want to, and you shouldn't necessarily be chasing all the trends, but you should recognize that if you choose, for example, I write urban fantasy, for example, if I choose to write vampires, it's going to sell a lot better than mermaids because more people are looking for vampire books. That's also true for nonfiction. If I have a book about, creativity coming out, I have to know if people are looking for anxiety or procrastination or motivation or like what they actually need to make sure that I can still share my message and write what I want to write, but I have to make sure I'm solving their problems and I'm answering what they're looking for. I'm meeting them where they are. And you can maybe, for example, I have a book out on book marketing. Authors don't actually need help with book marketing. They think they do because I want more visibility to sell more books, but they need to go several steps back and start by writing a book that readers actually want, which is the first one. But even if you do that right, even if you write a book that readers want and are looking for and they find it and they buy it, great, that's a success. But does it actually satisfy them? Do they stop reading? Why do they stop reading? When do they quit? How do you get them to keep reading longer? That's what I'm really focused on right now. So in this castle we've rented for 3 weeks. One of the things I'm really trying to do, I've made a course this year. I've really been focused on the craft of writing. So I've made a course about the craft of writing with all of these cheat sheets and templates and checklists that I think will help writers to fix their first draft and actually turn it into a better, more satisfying book that's going to resonate on a deeper emotional level. I'm not sure what that book is going to be titled yet, but I'm going to finish that and put that out pretty soon, because not only will it help other writers, but it will also help the co-writers I'm working with or the writers that I'm coaching or training, because I don't think you necessarily, it's not always worth it to spend $5,000 on a developmental editor to find problems with your story. If you can learn those things yourself and fix those things yourself, then you can hire a proofreader, or you can even use Grammarly or ProWriting Aid to fix the typos or mistakes. Almost always, it's not the writing that's the problem, it's the core structural issues. Your book just doesn't have enough conflict or dramatic tension. Or even for nonfiction, I see a lot of nonfiction, I made this mistake before where I just focus on content and I put out a lot of useful information, which is helpful, but it's not meaningful. It doesn't resonate on an emotional level, which means even if it's practical knowledge, you have to do more. If you write nonfiction, it's not just your job to impart knowledge. You also have to inspire other people to trust you so that they take action and they understand your information enough to use it and to see results. Because if you can't get them to believe in your system or your process, then they're not going to take any action and the book won't be meaningful for them. So there's things you can do within the book. And I'm really excited about the stuff that I'm going to put out later soonish. Hopefully while we're here I can finish that little book. I'm going to have a little a test basically to follow up. If you read the book, you can take the test and it kind of just hones in on those issues so that you can really quickly go back through your book and see if you're making those common writing mistakes that you can actually improve by yourself to make a much stronger book that people are going to enjoy reading, that's going to be more meaningful for those readers. So that's what I'm working on right now. Those are the main two steps, and that's the part that most authors fail with, because they finish a book, they didn't do any market research, they didn't study craft, or I actually think, I've read all the books on craft, I don't think people are focusing on the right issues. It's very difficult for even very successful writers to communicate, what is good writing? How do you take a mediocre first draft? How do you fix it to turn it into a really strong novel or nonfiction book? And so that's what I'm working on right now, but I'm going to move on to step 3, which I haven't really, this is going to be a new edition of Guerrilla Publishing, so I'm going to hit these 4 steps a little clearer than I did in the first copy of this book. I'm actually going to go through, I've learned a lot this year about nonfiction writing, so I'm going to go through and revise all my nonfiction books and tighten them up and make them stronger, because I know that it's not only about, my books sell pretty well, people buy my books, they like them, I get a lot of good reviews, but I don't feel like I'm leading readers to take action to see the results that they want, which is what I really want to do with these nonfiction books. I want them to be not only valuable, I want them to be books that people are sharing and talking about because they're so helpful for people. So number 3, and this is the one that I really focus on a lot, is make your book attractive to people. So once you've got a good book that people are searching for, you've titled it, you've picked a subtitle and keywords and a title that shows up when people are searching for those things, which is a big deal because then you don't have to do marketing or advertising. If your book shows up organically for keyword searching, then you've got a huge boost in visibility, which can really help sales. And if your book satisfies readers and they like it, they're going to start to follow you. They're going to start to talk about your book or share your book, which also, again, means you're not spending money on ads, which is why it can be so powerful. But the third step is, now that you have a good book that satisfies readers, you have to package it and position it in a way that makes it obvious that your book is for that audience, so that they can just see your book and the title and the cover and immediately recognize that it has the things that they're looking for. It looks like the other books in the category. So this is a common mistake when authors publish. They think the cover doesn't really matter so much. If only somebody would look inside, they'd see the writing is good. Or a lot of first-time writers say, I want a cover that stands out and is different. I hate, I write romance. I don't like all the bare-chested men on the romance covers. Or, for example, I write young adult magical academy, which is a huge genre right now, but some people don't like the girl in the uniform, which is common for urban fantasy style. You have to make a cover that hits, like, the more genre symbols you can fit on your cover to make it super clear and obvious where it belongs on the bookshelf, it's a faster decision for readers. It's more likely readers will click on the cover because they recognize what it is, and then they can read the blurb. If your cover doesn't get them to click, if it's too confusing, if they don't know what it is, they don't click on it because they don't think it's for them, that's a cover design problem. And if your cover is wrong, they'll never read the blurb. They will never know what the book is about. So it's not the writing that's the problem, it's the packaging and the positioning. Cover design is a huge thing. I have a book just about cover design, which is Cover Design Secrets That Sell, I think, or something like that. I've got a lot of videos on YouTube about cover design, and I've been kind of upping my game. The cover design world has changed dramatically in the last 2 years as all these new cover design resources and designers and illustrators have been available. So it's really a shifting market, and it's really amazing the kinds of quality design that you can get now on even a cheaper budget that you couldn't get 5 years ago. So that's really exciting. But most authors aren't taking advantage because they don't know where to look, they don't know these designers or where to find these cheaper designers, or they want the wrong thing for their book. They're really set in, I want my cover to look like this, and I want it to stand out and be different, and then they make something that doesn't communicate the genre or the topic, or it doesn't look like the category that it's in, and that's gonna hurt you. It's better to fit in and be like a really easy, obvious click, and then try to sell the book with the blurb by hitting all of the points that readers want and making sure you're communicating the benefits so that it's a no-brainer. Yes, this matches what I was searching for. This is the type of book I want to read. Anyway, and there are buzzwords and keywords. You got to do a lot of research to get all that stuff right. But all of that stuff is packaging. This is still just publishing the book, and you don't want to spend a lot of money getting the covers wrong and editing wrong and putting out a product that doesn't sell. Anyway, so it's not an easy thing to fix. You probably need to hire good designers, but even if you hire good designers, you can't just tell them what you want to make because you probably don't know what you're doing, and that's a common first-time author mistake. It's totally possible to get a decent cover by yourself or to make your own cover as long as you study enough book design fundamental principles to understand what you're doing. I have book design templates in Microsoft Word. I've got book design tools and tutorials online. If you learn what you're doing, you can make maybe not an amazing cover, but something that's clear enough that it works, and you can get started with it on a very low budget, $50 or something for some stock images, and you can put together something that's not terrible. It's not, your cover is really important, so if you have the budget and you find the right designer, you want to do it right, but also it's very common, even for experienced authors. I do this all the time. I'll launch a book with a cover and then realize later I screwed it up. It's the wrong cover for the wrong audience. It's not converting well, and I'll redo my cover. So you want to be careful of investing too much in your book covers because you may do it wrong and you may have to redo it again later. That's the other big disadvantage of designing your own covers on the cheap, is if you design it, you're really going to like it, and it's going to be hard for you to let go. Or even if you paid someone a lot of money and they made exactly what you wanted and you're really happy with the cover, when people tell you, well, this cover doesn't fit the genre, it doesn't do this or that, you may blow it off and say, well, my book is special, I don't care about the marketing or or what everybody else is doing. I'm just going to do it my way. That's going to put you at a huge disadvantage. If your cover isn't doing the bulk of the marketing for you, which it should be doing, like that's the most cost-effective book marketing you can do, is just getting your cover right. It does really take research. Like, you have to understand some things. I'd recommend watching my video series on YouTube just to kind of get a feel for the common mistakes that a lot of authors make, to make sure that you're not making them. But again, that's all just publishing. That's just getting the design of your book right. We haven't even started with the marketing yet. So point number 4, this is a 4-step process. Again, real quickly, number 1 is a book that readers want to read. Number 2 is a book readers enjoy reading, which is not the same thing. Number 3 is a book that's attractive to those people, to that audience. So you have to know what they like. You have to research other covers in the genre and see what's selling. You have to be a little careful, because a lot of the books, okay, I'll go off on a little cover design tangent for a minute, but a lot of the books in the best-selling categories of Amazon or other booksellers, some of them are traditionally published, and those covers are designed differently because they're meant for print bookstores, and those traditional publishers don't really focus on online sales as much. Your cover needs to stand out on Amazon because you don't have an audience, or you have to pay for advertising to get your book in front of people. So you probably need, that's why a lot of indie covers are a lot stronger, brighter, more visceral. Even if they're not really well designed. I see a lot of best-selling authors who sell a ton of books, but they're hiring cheaper designers, and the book to cover design, it's good enough to immediately communicate the genre, but it's not great design. But it doesn't really matter. It's kind of an interesting dilemma, because as a designer, if I over-design, if my books are too well designed, I won't fit in with those other books that are selling really well. And I want to make sure my book looks like those other books, so that readers don't look at my book and say, well, this doesn't look like what I'm used to reading. It's an interesting thing. So there are some challenges involved, but it's definitely really important. And the last one, number 4, is just you need to get your book in front of people profitably. So this is where most authors struggle. You have to find a way to show your book to those readers. If you use a lot of keywords, you might show up in organic searches, which I've done a lot with blogging. So when people search for like best young adult mermaid trilogy or fantasy or completed series or whatever they're searching for, some of my blog posts will show up, and then of course my book will be among those on the list. That also is really good for my also bots on Amazon or other booksellers ecosystems. Underneath a best-selling book, there'll be a row of other books. Readers who bought this book also bought these other books. And if you are always recommending the right books to your audience while you're growing your audience, I'll have like a page of, these are my favorite books of all time. If you enjoyed this book, here are 10 other mermaid books or vampire books you might enjoy. I want to be promoting those books, because if readers who have bought my book also buy those other books, that's going to mean that my book will stick in Amazon's ecosystem and it will start to be shared organically. If you can train Amazon to show your book to the right people and the conversion is higher, Amazon will continue showing your book for free, because they are also making money when your book sells. So they want to sell your books for you, but you have to make it easy for them by training them. Like, if you don't get any sales, if nobody is even seeing your book page, they have no data, so they can't do anything for you, which is why it can be really helpful to start with ads, either Facebook ads or Amazon ads when you do a launch, just so that you can populate those Amazon also bots by targeting the right audience and saying, my book is kind of like Twilight with mermaids. I'm going to target people who enjoy Twilight and vampire fiction, but also enjoy mermaids and also have a Kindle Unlimited account. I can get really specific with my targeting. And if those people convert, Amazon will look at their purchasing habits, which is also why you don't want to share your book with your friends and family and ask them to buy a copy, because they buy all sorts of stuff and your also bots will get all screwed up. You want to be really selective to show your book in front of the right people, and you have to know who your audience is. But if you've done all of that right, it can still be a struggle with just one book to do it profitably, because what happens to a lot of writers is you'll do ads, you'll do a big launch campaign, you'll sell hopefully 100 copies, I think is a good launch goal if you don't have a platform. And we haven't even discussed reviews, which is a whole different topic. But if you have to build enough of an audience that you can give away enough copies of your book to get some reviews, 10 reviews, 20 reviews. If you don't have any reviews, you can't even begin marketing. But that's kind of a different thing, and it's part of this fourth step, which is just basically conversion. You have to be able to sell books at a lower cost than you're earning from your books. If you're not able to do that, you can't continue selling books. So there's different ways to get the visibility you need. You can do free stuff like list trades. Once you start building a list, you can trade, which just means, you know, you promote other people's books in your email list to your audience, and they will do the same for you. It depends on having a list, so you have to really focus on building up your own audience. I have lots of resources and courses about how to actually do that. Guerrilla publishing is kind of all about that, how to build up your own audience, website traffic, email list. I have a whole course just on email list building and like what to say to them once they've joined your list. That's all a different thing, and yes, it takes some time, and not everybody even needs to do platform building. If you only have one book, it's very possible to just launch a book and just focus on Amazon ads and not build any social media or any website or anything. That's totally possible. But if you want to be a career author with a big backlist and a lot of books, the difference of building your own platform is it's free. So it might take time, but you have your own audience that you can reach without paying for it. Otherwise, if you don't build your audience, you always have to pay for reach. You have to pay for ads, or you have to pay for access to reach people and put your book in front of them. And for most authors, you can't do that profitably, especially if you only have one book. If you don't have a platform, you'll keep spending money on promotion, but you won't be profitable. And if you're not profitable, it's unsustainable. And eventually you're gonna run out of money and you're gonna have to stop promoting your book. So there are ways to increase the value of your book. If you have a series, for example, it's much easier with a completed series to break even on advertising costs because you're earning more with read-through, assuming you've written a book that readers enjoy and they read one, they read the next one. But even for nonfiction, one thing that works really well is affiliate products or courses. For example, if people buy my book on, I haven't actually done this, but when they buy or they download Guerrilla Publishing for free, I will recommend all the tools that I use, like Grammarly, for example, instead of editing, which can save you thousands of dollars if you do it right and if you know how to self-edit your book for structural problems. A lot of authors, they don't want to do any of this stuff, and all this stuff feels overwhelming. They've written a book, they just want it to sell by itself. That's really not going to happen. There are instances, it does happen every once in a while, but like you can just put it out there and see for free. You can publish your book and just see if anybody likes it, but the chances are it probably won't get discovered. I tend to, like, if my books don't sell, I just made a book perma-free recently, which means I put it up on Kobo and Apple and all the other bookstores, and then I asked Amazon to price match it to free, so now it's in the free category. Amazon has a free and a paid category. So now my book is in the free category, which means people can download it for free. If they like the writing, they'll sign up to my email list to get other books or to hear more about me, and then I can tell them more about my book launch. So even though that book isn't making any money, it gets a few dozen downloads a day, and some of those people sign up to my list. And if I write a very good email autoresponder series to introduce them to me and my work and get them to know, like, and trust me, it's more likely they'll buy my next book when I launch, which can be really valuable. So that's the fourth step that most people miss. And you notice I'm not really talking about book marketing because a lot of people, they have a book out with the wrong cover. It's not a book that anybody wants. It's not a book that satisfies readers, and they can't get any visibility at it. So that, like, nobody is even seeing their book. And there's so many things to fix, they don't even know where to start. They don't know where, like, okay, I published a book, now what? How do I begin to do the marketing? And what they're really hoping for is somebody to just discover the book and promote them for free. And nobody's really gonna do that, or it's a very rare, it's a very rare thing. It's like being struck by lightning. You can hope that it happens, but if this is your book and you worked hard on this book, you want people to read it, you want people to enjoy it. And you've got to put some effort into learning some of this stuff, or at least enough of this stuff, so that it starts to take off. It can take time, and often, you know, the first couple years authors publish is usually pretty rough, and then they learn all this stuff, and it slowly becomes easier. And what I've seen happen many times in the last couple years, writers have been writing, you know, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, and all of a sudden they get everything right. They write to market, they have great covers, they have a great blurb, they push with ads to populate their also bots. Once you get all these steps right, you can very suddenly see an enormous shift. And I see this all the time. Like, my first 3 years I earned $100, and then this year I earned $10,000 because this one series of this one book you know, they did everything right. So those are the things that I try to communicate with the Guerrilla Publishing book, which, like I said, is going to be newly updated. So grab that if you haven't already. There's a free link somewhere, or you can search for Guerrilla Publishing on Amazon and get a copy. Those are the basic things that I try to focus on, because if you don't get these right, book marketing is not going to work. You can pay $25,000 for a publicity campaign that's just going to be a waste of money. Nobody will guarantee book sales. And this is why I personally don't really do marketing, is because unless I can help you write a good book, unless I can help you do the keyword research and the title and make sure it matches what people are searching for, unless I can help you design a cover that's going to convert and write the blurb, marketing is not going to work. I know that all the money you spend on ads is just going to be wasted, and that's what most authors unfortunately do, because nobody tells them what the core problems are. They're just not ready for book marketing yet. Anyway, I'm going to go in. I heard the bell ringing for dinner, so I know that all the other writers are over there cooking and eating down below. Somewhere on YouTube I put a video tour of the castle we're staying in. This is something I try to do every year. This is the 4th castle we've rented as a writing retreat. It's just a really nice, fun chance for us to kind of come together and work on serious projects. I just finished a novel today, so I'm pretty excited about that. It's going to launch and do pretty well. I have a pretty big audience at this point, so it's a lot easier. I've spent years building my platform, and I'm also really proud of this book, and I know people are going to like it, so that's exciting. You don't have to, if you do it the right way. I know that I've put all the right things in my book, so I know that people are going to like it. If you've written a book for the first time and you put it out, you may have no idea whether anybody's going to like it, which can be really terrifying, but it doesn't have to be that way. You don't have to create in a void from pure passion. You can still completely enjoy your writing. It's just as much fun to write a book that people enjoy as it is to write a book that nobody likes. It's actually a lot more fun. So I hope that this book helps you. I hope that this little 4-step path makes things a little bit clearer if all of the steps are confusing. There are a whole bunch of launch, like if you get the book Guerrilla Publishing, there's also a companion workbook which walks you through like my launch strategies and the places that I promote my books, the most effective advertising and all that stuff. All of that stuff can really, really work, but only if you have those 4 initial steps down first. If your book is converting and earning well enough that you can afford advertising, then there's no limit. Then you can just scale up. And I've never really been to that point before, which is why I'm really excited about this series I'm completing. It's a long epic fantasy. It's like 300K or something, which means my page reads will be up a lot higher, which means I'm going to be able to bid higher and outbid other competitors in the same genre, which means in theory, like, I've never really advertised or gone as big as I would like to, because I have a lot of book wands. I've been kind of playing around with fiction, and it's harder to justify an ad spend when you're losing money. But once you have a completed series, or with a nonfiction book, often you can just charge a higher price, because nonfiction readers who are looking to solve a problem will pay more if you provide the solution. So once you have all that stuff figured out, it's possible. I know people who spend $10,000 on a launch, but they make $30,000 in the first month or something. Once you start, like once you know your conversion and you know your audience and you get your targeting right and your ads right, it's not easy, but once the content is done, it's good content, you can just figure out those marketing pieces. And I also know a lot of people that they don't want to do any of that. They don't want to run ads. They don't want to run marketing. It's very difficult to find anybody else who can do that stuff for you, because it can be a full-time job keeping track of all the ads. And I know it's frustrating and nobody really wants to do it. I'm lazy with my ads. I just set them up, and if they're kind of profitable, I let them go. But if you're not profitable, if you can't advertise your book profitably, you can't really market your book. Or you have to think of creative ways to reach your audience that don't cost any money, which is also possible. And I think I talk about a lot of the ways that you can do that in this book. That's what I've done for the last couple of years. I've sold probably 50,000 novels, and I haven't really paid very much for advertising, but I've never been able to scale to a large extent, because advertising really is like, once you've got all the other pieces right, paying for visibility, as long as you can convert profitably, that's the secret to, you know, getting at a much bigger level. It's the difference between selling 100 copies and 10,000 copies. So I know that stuff is difficult. I know it can sound overwhelming, but I think if you focus, I know if you focus on, almost always it's not the marketing that's the problem. It's not the advertising. Most authors aren't ready for that. Every time someone asks me, you know, why is nobody buying my book? Why is nobody leaving reviews? They haven't built an audience. They don't have a book anybody wants to read, or they're not communicating the benefits of the book in the right way to that audience, and they don't have a cover that attracts that audience. If you don't have those three things, and that's just cover, blurb, and reviews. If you don't have those right, even if readers would love your book, they don't know that it's for them. They're not buying it. They're not looking at it. They just glance at it and ignore it because it doesn't stand out. Luckily, those are fixable problems. Even if you've written a book that's not very strong, you can go through with my templates and cheat sheets and checklists and analyze each scene and figure out why do people quit reading? What's wrong with the scene? Why isn't it satisfying readers? They're fixable problems. This is stuff, like, even if you've screwed everything up, and almost every writer always screws up everything in their first few books, you don't have to. You can learn this stuff and launch a successful book the first time if you do it right. But most authors are reluctant to write to market. They're reluctant to get a cover that sells because they feel like it doesn't matter, and you know, they're writers, not marketers. Why should they have to do any of this stuff anyway? But they're fixable problems. You can learn them if you study for a week. If you go through some of my videos on YouTube, you can figure out how to fix the problems with your books so that it starts converting better. And you can definitely make incremental progress and take books that you've written. You can take your backlist if you have other books that don't sell and go through and fix them all up and see a huge difference in sales and conversion. So it's never too late. Don't give up. If it's stressful or frustrating, it's that for everybody. There are millions of writers writing books, and everybody goes through the same struggle and process. It's not like people who have tons of money and they can just hire all the best help. They're not necessarily any more successful. I know people who charge $25,000 for like a book coaching program, and people pay that much money and they get a book finished and those books still don't sell because most of those coaching programs don't actually focus on the quality of the writing, or they don't focus on who the audience actually is and does the audience actually want the book. Most of those are like calling cards for businesses, so the business owners just want to have those done. But you can spend that much money on you know, visibility, and it won't convert. It won't make the book any more successful. So you really have to focus on, it's not a matter of money. This is stuff that you can do for free. You just need to spend a little bit of time to learn enough that you can get the basics right. If you get the core basics wrong, which are those three things that I have mentioned, then you will be able to do that fourth thing, which is put your book in front of the right readers for less money than you earn when you sell a copy. And once you get to that point, that's like, you know, 95% of all the authors publishing books, they have books that nobody wants to read. The very few percent that have good books, they still have crappy covers or crappy blurbs or no reviews, so they can't sell it anyway. The competition of authors who are writing good books and packaging them well, they have great blurbs, it's not that many people. It's a few hundred people, maybe 1,000 people who are making the big bucks on Amazon and who have all the bestsellers out of 5 million books on Amazon. So you're not competing against 5 million books. You're competing against a few thousand books. Those are the authors who are doing everything right. It's actually not that difficult to get all the basics right and suddenly become one of those best-selling authors, because like I said, most authors just aren't getting any of the basics right. So I hope this video helps a little bit. Bye-bye from France. I'm going to make some more videos just about the craft of writing and publish them in my guerrilla publishing group on Facebook, so you might want to look around or stay tuned for those. Bye-bye.